going to be sharing with you a black bean brownie recipe. It's very delicious. These are very moist brownies, super chocolatey. And the best thing about them, because we're using our beans instead of flour, it makes these brownies gluten-free. Now, the other benefit of using the beans to make the brownies is that we're gonna save the water from the beans, and that's called aquafaba. And we're gonna use that to make a whipped topping that we're going to serve on the side of our brownies. And then we're gonna use some avocado and cocoa powder and some maple syrup to create a chocolate frosting. So where some of these ingredients may sound strange in their application for brownies, you can rest assured that there are many, many countries around the world that make many delicious bean desserts, and namely the Portuguese black bean tarts. I love those. So our star ingredient is the beans, and the beans are predominantly 64% of the beans are fiber. Approximately 42% of the beans are protein. 39% is potassium, 21% is carbohydrates, and it's also very high in magnesium, vitamin B6, and iron. So there's a lot of nutrition that is packed into the beans, which makes our little decadent dessert a little bit more nutritious than maybe some of the other recipes that you have. So let me give you an overview of what we need, and then we'll get started baking. So for our baking today, we're going to need half a cup of honey, some vanilla extract, almond extract, some coffee, that's instant espresso I've got, a large can of beans, I'm using black beans, half a cup of cocoa, 2 tablespoons of butter, 3 eggs, a quarter cup of nuts, and then for our aquavalva whip, we're going to need some cream of tartar, and for our frosting, we're going to need some 1 avocado, a quarter cup of cocoa powder, a quarter cup of the maple syrup, and then we're going to use some vanilla and almond extract to flavor it. So we are ready to start making our brownies. We're going to need a pan. This is 9 by 9, and I've lined it with parchment paper, and just to spray it with a bit of oil. And we're going to set our oven preheating at 350 degrees. So let me do that now. Now the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to remove the water from our beans. And this water is, it almost looks a little gelatinous. If you are not using the water from the canned beans and you're actually rehydrating beans, then you would have to rehydrate your beans, and then you would have to cook your beans in a little water. And once the beans are cooked, that water or the residual water from cooking the beans is the same as this water. So you could use that. Okay, so we've rinsed, or we've removed our bean water, and we're going to set this aside because we're going to whip that into a delicious whipped topping. All right, so we've got I've got all my ingredients here that I need, and you're going to do this in a food processor. So the first thing we're going to do is we've strained the beans. So now we've just got the dry beans on the bottom. There we go. And we're just going to pulse till the beans are nice and creamy. So you just want to make sure that the beans are, they'll be creamy like this, like a nice cream. So you just want to make sure that all those beans are pureed. Okay, next we're going to add our eggs, and we're going to use 3 eggs, 1 egg at a time. I want to make sure it's thoroughly mixed in with all 3 eggs. That is why it's a good idea to a shell. Uh-oh. All right, hold on a second. So I got my shell out of my egg. They say to wet your finger and then go in and pull out the shell. It actually worked. So 2 eggs. And then our 3rd egg. All right, so we just want that thoroughly mixed. Now we're going to add our honey. Whoops. My God, this is a bit of a disaster. All right, the honey. And they say that if you, I got this honey from the honey house, but there is a theory that if you eat local honey, that it will help you with any seasonal allergies. And the theory behind that is that the pollen, which the bees come in contact with, you end up ingesting it when you're eating the honey. And that way it builds up your immune system to whatever types of plants are in your area. So now we're gonna just mix this. Just give it a little swirl. And we're also going to add 2 tablespoons of butter. So to this, we're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of almond extract, just our dry ingredients. So we've got cocoa, and that's unsweetened cocoa powder. Then we need 1 teaspoon of baking powder, half a teaspoon of some salt, 1 tablespoon of coffee, and this is instant coffee. And that's it. And we're just going to whip this up a little bit, just to blend it a little bit. It's going to be all blended in the blender anyway. And then we're just going to add a little at a time, or actually half of it. For about 1 minute to 2 minutes. You just want to make sure that everything is very, very well combined. So everything is well combined, and we're going to pour the batter directly into our 9x9 pan. Look how rich and chocolatey that is. So now we've got our batter, which I poured into our 9x9 pan, and we're just going to add half a cup of chopped nuts, and you can add chocolate chips if you prefer, but I really like the nuts. So nuts with some nuts, and these are walnuts that I'm using. They'll sink into the batter and cook perfectly fine. A little crunch in every bite. And here we go. Oops, let me give you an overview. So the oven is preheated at 350, and we're going to put our brownies in the middle rack in the middle of the oven. And we're going to time it for 35 minutes. So while we have our brownies in the oven baking, it's given me enough time to wash the dishes. Next, we are going to make our frosting, and then we'll be able to put it in the fridge to let it set before the brownies are cooked. So all we need, and these are just basic amounts. You're gonna need an avocado. So they're average amounts. Obviously, the size of your avocado may change the consistency of the frosting. So, but just as a general rule, you can add more or less according to your preference. So 1 avocado and half a cup of cocoa, half a cup of maple syrup, we want just a pinch of salt just to accentuate all the flavors. Then we want a teaspoon of almond extract, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, or you could leave out the almond extract. These are just really to give it some additional flavors. And then I'm going to use, actually a teaspoon of instant coffee. And that's it. And we are going to whip this into a creamy frosting. So my avocado was a little small, or it was on the small side, so my frosting turned out a little bit runny. So all I did was I added another half of an avocado. And that's what I mean. If your frosting is not the consistency that you like it, add a little bit more cocoa, add a little bit more avocado. It's not a big deal. This frosting, I mean, it really smells fantastic. And I think that with this kind of frosting, you wouldn't have to worry about giving it to your children or even for yourself, because it's just such a healthy version. Okay, so that gave us, actually it gave us exactly 1 cup of frosting. Let me see what it tastes like, just as a little sample. Wow, I could eat that as a mousse. Actually, you could eat this as a mousse. It's really very delicious. Okay, so I'm gonna put this in the fridge, and hopefully it's gonna set up a little bit so that we can apply it to our brownies when they're done. So it's been 5 minutes, and now we have soft peaks. So now that we've got soft peaks, we're going to add half a teaspoon of cream of tartar. And we're going to continue whipping for another minute or so. So now it's been another minute or so, and you can see the it's getting much thicker with that cream of tartar. And at this point, once you've got a little bit more stability, this is when you want to add a little bit of vanilla extract, almond extract. We're going to add a teaspoon of the coffee. We're going to add of the cocoa. So we're going to make this a mocha topping, but you could certainly do it without these ingredients. You could just add a little bit of vanilla and almond extract, or just vanilla extract and a little bit of sugar, and that's it. But let's keep going. So half a teaspoon of the vanilla. Now this has no flavor. We're adding the flavor to it. Half a teaspoon of almond. We'll do a teaspoon of coffee. Wow, it smells great. And we'll do a teaspoon of the chocolate. So that will give us the mocha flavor. And then I'm just gonna add a little tiny bit of salt just to hit those flavors a little bit. And for sweetener, this is up to you. You can add a couple of tablespoons of sugar. I don't want the whipped topping to be too sweet, so I'm actually just going to add a tablespoon of maple syrup. And I'm just going to add this very slowly. So you could add honey as a sweetener, you could add sugar. But if you are using sugar, then you would want to turn it into a fine powder so it dissolves quickly. Okay, I'm just going to turn this up and add the maple syrup just in a stream. Now I'm going to turn this on high and I'm going to continue whipping it for another 3 minutes or so. So that's been another 3 minutes, and now our brownies are done. So now we have a thick whipped topping. Isn't that unbelievable? With just bean water. So let me get the brownies out of the oven. Oh my God, they look great. Wow. Smelling good, that's all I can say. Ooh. And they are perfectly done. Okay, let's take it out. Okay, we're just gonna set those to the side. Look at that, amazing. And let it cool. And like I said, that's a nice firm hold. I'm just gonna scoop out my cream so that we can measure exactly how much we're going to get out of a can. And this is very, very versatile. So you can see that the topping is nice and firm. It gave us, from that 1 can of beans, it gave us 4 cups of topping, which you can flavor however you like. Obviously you can't add too much liquid or you're not going to get the same volume of whip, but it just goes to show you, you'll never throw out that bean water again. And if you don't want this much whip, just take the extra bean water and put it in an ice cube tray and freeze it. You can easily store it that way for months and use it another day. All you have to do is thaw it out, and then you're gonna whip it up just like you did originally. It is a very easy way to make a low-calorie whipped topping that is dairy-free. You might find that the water or the aquafaba water from the beans does have a slight bean taste, which is why I added all the extra flavoring. More often than not, if you're just making the whipped topping, chickpeas, the water from chickpeas would probably have the least imparted bean flavor, and it would give you a true white whipped topping. So if you just want to make the whipped topping, you might want to buy yourself a can of chickpeas. I wanted to use the water from the beans I was using in the brownies, and that's why I did it this way. Just going to put this off into the fridge, and we're going to wait until our brownies are fully cooled down. Now we are ready to put our brownie, assemble everything. It's still slightly warm. It is very light and moist and fluffy, but it's definitely looks very moist as well. So, and you'll get 16 slices out of this. So these are just small cubes. And then we've got our avocado frosting, which has really set up very nicely. So it's just, and we can top it with some of our mocha aquafaba whip. And that looks like a beautiful little dessert. So let's try it out. It is remarkably delicious. Like I said, the aquafaba, I added a little bit of extra maple syrup to sweeten it up a bit. It's delicious. And don't skip out on the nuts if you can, because they add a lot of texture. The whole combination, the frosting is delicious, the aquafaba and the brownies, and this is definitely a hit with me and with all my gluten-free friends. Actually, I think with all my friends, regardless of their dietary needs, I think they are really going to enjoy this. So if you try this and you like it, I hope you share it, because Everybody should have a brownie once in a while. And this one's pretty guilt-free. Enjoy!